Okay, well, nice to see you all. Some of you I can see, and some of you I can't see. But welcome to Ian's Open Eco Homes, Country in the City. Sorry, I've just accidentally put something on top of my notes. Yeah, so everybody's muted at the moment, and it would help things if you could remain muted until you're called on to speak. Matt, who you'll see on your screen, waving his hand, is going to be keeping an eye on chat. And so if you want to ask a question, please write it in the chat. You'll find, for those of you who are not familiar with it, you'll find the little chat bubble at the bottom of your screen of grid of images, and you just press on the chat symbol and you'll see a pop-up which has one piece of chat in it from Mark saying hello to everybody. So so that's how we'll take the questions, put them in chat, and then Matt will either collate the questions or will call on you to ask your question direct. We are recording this session, so if you don't want to be recorded, sorry, the recording will then be put on the CCF website, and if you don't want to be included in that, please put it in chat, and then you'll be edited out. And so tonight, I'm really looking forward to what Ian's going to present. I've seen a few little snippets of it, and we will have a couple of video tours, bits of video tour, followed by a presentation, and there will be opportunities to ask questions at the end of each of the little video bits, and in the middle and at the end of the PowerPoint presentation. So put your questions in the chat, and I think we're going to have a really interesting evening. Okay, so have I forgotten to mention anything, Matt or Ian?
I think that sounds fine, Anne.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so over to you, Ian.
Well, thanks very much, Anne. Thanks everyone for joining the chat. So I've got a kind of a presentation which has got some gaps in where we can have discussions or whatever and pick up points from chat. So we'll be able to do things like that as we go along. So let's wind the clock back 15 years. So 15 years ago, obviously I was feeling a bit bored, and I persuaded the rest of the family, which at the time was wife Sue and daughter Sophie, that what we really wanted to do was to build a house in our back garden. And and we engaged Mole Architects, and we wrote them a half-page brief, but actually it came down to three things. We wanted it to be beautiful, sustainable, and connected to the outside world. So hopefully you'll agree that that's what we've ended up with. Now, because this is a presentation and you don't actually get to see the house, which is a bit sad really, isn't it? The first thing I'm going to show you is an artistic video made by a daughter Sophie and now the fourth inhabitant of the house, son-in-law Paul, who shot the video, edited it, wrote the music and played the music for it. So hopefully you'll enjoy that. It's quite short.
Sophie, well done.
Okay, so
Mm. Very nice, Ian.
Thank you. So there's probably not really any chat to go with that. Just to start to fill out a bit more detail about the house now, the next thing we'll do is a video walkthrough of the house, and I'll play that and we'll stop it and make some comments as we run. Okay, hopefully you can see that on your screen now, can you guys? Yeah. So this is walking in the front door of the house. There's a lobby and cloakroom, a utility room, and hidden in a cupboard we have the mechanical ventilation and heat recovery unit, which ventilates the entire house. Uses about 50 watts of energy to do so. So it's running all the time. We just leave it running all the time. We now move into probably the most heavily used room in the house, kitchen, dining room, hanging out place with a larder, and a wonderful aspect of the garden. We're facing south. I'll just pause there for a minute. In fact, I'll just slide back. You'll see on the left there, there's a large tree. It's a liquid amber. I'm told it's the second best liquid amber in Cambridge. And it's pretty tall. And if we didn't have that tree, it would be unbearably hot in this room because there is no solar shading at all and it's facing south. But of course, it provides a solar shading in the summer whilst allowing the sun to deep penetrate right into the room in the winter. So that's how we do the solar shading bit there. One thing you will need if you get technology in your house is what we rather grandly call the plant room, which has got a solar hot water system running there, 59 degrees being up from the roof at that time. Obviously it wasn't today. Got a rainwater recycling unit. We collect the water from the roof, and we've got a ground source heat pump. Those are the main items of active technology that are running in the house. And moving out of the kitchen, there's one study here. There's another study right at the other end of the house. Obviously, we anticipated working from home by about 15 years by building studies. We now have a long corridor. Corridors can be wasted space, but we use it really for three things. Firstly, it has these two day beds in little bays that protrude out of it, which are comfortable places to sleep, read a book, stick grandchildren when they visit. Secondly, of course, it's our library. It's got loads of books in it, and it's also a bit of an art gallery in that we hang pictures in it as well. One of the bathrooms. This room doesn't have a window, but it's fantastically well lit because it has a large roof light, and the mirrored reveals to the roof light make the thickness of the roof space just disappear. Very interesting. Another bed area there. And then into the living room. It's quite a large, squarish room with a high ceiling to give it a sense of scale. There's a kind of slit window at the top there, which faces west, so that the setting sun comes in grazing underneath the slope of the ceiling there. And then it's got these very large east-facing French doors that look out into the garden and across the back gardens of other houses in the road. Okay, so that's a quick walk through the house. Are there any points of discussion that anybody would like me to address now?
There are no questions that have come through just yet, Ian. So just on that point, please everyone put your questions in the chat, and then I'll ask you to unmute, and then you can ask your question. But yeah, first please put them in the chat. But I've got a question for you just to just from the video. First of all, thanks. It looks absolutely amazing. Absolutely incredible house. I'm sure most people would agree. I hope most people would agree. And I just have one question going back to the technology. I mean, that's what I'm interested in at heart. And the plant room looks amazing. But I noticed there's no solar PV. There's solar thermal. Did you consider solar PV, or and what made you decide to put that in, say, solar thermal instead of solar PV?
Yeah, we did consider solar PV. We have a flat roof that will become obvious, and at the time when we looked into it, there were issues with shading. Remember, this was 15 years ago, and I'm not certain whether the sort of controllers which will take individual panels by themselves were available at that time. So basically, if one part of this roof got shaded, the whole thing switched off. And so, and also we were concerned that they would need to tilt up slightly and they would be visible. Also, it's a green roof, which you'll see later, which we particularly wanted. We didn't really, we were concerned about the view of the house from the planning perspective from the old property. So that was kind of in our minds as well. It would have been nice to have PV as well. And the next house I built, he said, I would like to, I would hope we'll be moving on into systems which are much more rich in terms of technology, with PV, battery storage, electric cars, and clever ways of sharing energy and taking energy from and to the grid. So, but yeah, we didn't end up with PV.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So some questions are starting to come through on the chat. Oh, I see you've just answered Anne there in terms of the location. I think, yeah, that's a really interesting one, is it really does look like it's in the countryside. So you just want to elaborate on the location and actually where we were there in Cambridge, or where that was shot from.
So the location is, we're just opposite Churchill College in the Madingley Road. So about 10 minutes walk from Magdalen Bridge, if you like. So not smack in the centre, but certainly well within the city boundaries. We were fortunate in that the original house had a large garden, about just under half an acre, and that's been split fairly equally between the two properties. So both houses still have a nice garden.
Sure. And another question that just came through is that you mentioned that you're building this house in your back garden. Is there still another main house that you use?
Yes, and you'll be able to see that. We don't use it, we've sold it. But yeah, well, I would say the original house is still there, but actually the new owners of the house gutted it, and in fact even took the back off the house and put a big steel frame on and changed the design. So it's been completely modernized, had external insulation, and there's not a single part of it I recognize when I go around there. Even the staircase is different. But yeah, technically the original house is still there. Yeah.
Great. And Mark, do you want to unmute yourself and just ask the question you had?
Yes, it's come out rather scrambled in my typing, but I was wondering how much of the original garden did you keep and how much of it is new? Fascinated by the video walking around the garden. How much, how much is part of the old garden?
So the well, the liquid amber is original. There is a hornbeam hedge behind it, which is still original. The vegetable garden is essentially unchanged. But yeah, a lot of stuff was removed, obviously.
Sorry, okay.
Yeah. Okay, I think I'll move on to the running through the slides now, which is, and this is really about the process of building the house and what's involved and what you, just to see what goes on behind the scenes as well. So let me share screen first.
Yeah, you've got it open.
Funny how things work perfectly on the
There it is.
right, okay.
Okay, hold on. I don't think it's sharing it yet though.
Okay.
They've gone all tiny.
We're just trying, I can see the presentation, but I suspect you can't at the moment. Let's try
No, I
sharing.
don't think you're sharing it yet.
Okay.
No.
Let me turn that off because you don't need to
Yeah.
video clip. There we
Okay. Can you all see a drawing?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So sorry to start with a technical drawing, but if you can imagine the Madingley Road being running up your screen from on the right hand side, the thing marked X is the existing house. Yeah. And the bit we've got then starts underneath that. So you can see some things labeled G, which is our new garage and workshop, and behind it's a bike store. There's a thing called GH for Gatehouse, this was drawn by an architect. It's rather a grand name for what we call the entryway, which used to be the integral garage of the old house, but basically is the way which we walk through from the front drive, which is where we leave the cars, down a path to the new house. And the new house is on the left-hand half of the image. LA is the liquid amber, and you will have seen in the video, we walked into the house through the front door, which is at the bottom of the house there, up through the entrance, the kitchen, past a study, turn left and down a corridor past bedrooms and bathrooms into a living room. First thing I'll say is that it's why is the house like it is? If you draw on the plan, which isn't shown, all the trees, etc., on the boundaries and the liquid amber, then the bit of ground you're left with outside the tree root zone is pretty well L-shaped. Why is it single story? It's single story for planning reasons because it's backland development. So it's L-shaped and single story driven by external circumstance. We're fine with that. It is about the most inefficient shape for a sustainable building because it's all outside. Every room has 1, 2 or 3 outside walls and a floor which goes down to the ground and a ceiling which goes up to the sky. So it's not ideal from that perspective, but we mitigate that by lots of insulation. So this is a view from the old house, if I call it that, looking south. The buildings beyond Department of Applied Maths and Theoretical Physics. And the fencing that's up is the area that the builders were allowed to get to work in. And there is a view of the old house in its unmodified form, for those who asked about that. So the first thing they did, which surprised us really in a way, shouldn't have done, was they had to remove an awful lot of ground. And in fact, what you can see there has been made up with sort of MOT number 1 or whatever base to give a firm base for the machine that's going to come in next. And there on the ground, they've marked everywhere where there's going to be a pile. Now, we were concerned to minimise the amount of concrete used in the construction. And rather than strip foundations, which would have been quite deep because of the trees and stuff which are around, we went for concrete screw piles, which are really quite light in terms of the amount of concrete that's used. And one of the issues of backland development is access. You will see that we could only just get the piling machine down the gap between what was the old integral garage to the old house and the side fence. And the floor construction we used was unconventional. So in this picture, you can see some pieces of concrete, which are the heads of the piles or caps, on which are laid galvanized steel beams. Those beams, everywhere where there's going to be a wall in the house, there is a beam. The bits in between are filled with panels, slabs, which are 99% expanded polystyrene and 1% a just simple galvanized steel plate at the edges. So you slot all those into place and put some more insulation on top, and you end up with an awful lot of insulation, a little bit of steel and a little bit of concrete. You need to add concrete to make reinforced beams around the perimeter and where the heavy walls are going to be, which is why there's a gap between the insulation and the boards which are used to form the edge of the concrete when the concrete is laid. So that's looking at the whole thing again from the original house. You can see the coils of underfloor heating have been laid at this stage. And then concrete is pumped in and the whole lot is screeded over to a depth about 3 inches of screed. So again, the floor uses less concrete as well as the foundations themselves. The underfloor heating was pumped up to check its integrity. And continuing with the theme of boring holes in the ground, the next drilling rig to arrive was to drill the boreholes for the ground source heat pump. We had hoped to have 2 100-metre deep boreholes, but when they got down to about 40 metres, the holes started collapsing because you get into a green sand layer instead of nice amenable clay. So we ended up having to have 6 boreholes. They have to be, I think, 5 or 6 metres apart and 5 metres from the building. So it was actually, we could just about fit them in sort of down the entryway walkway and round the edge of the house. More things to go in the ground. I mentioned the fact we have rainwater recycling. This is the tank arriving. That's it, sunk into the ground. Surprisingly long way down. And if you do have a tank like that put in the ground, you then have to put a load of concrete on top of it, unfortunately. Otherwise, the pressure of the groundwater would pop it out of the ground when it was empty. And a further consequence of backland development, stuff has to be carried. You will see in the house these laminated timber beams, which are part of the structure, roof structure, and you'll see them more in some images of the interior of the house. So there were quite a number of those. I can't remember whether this is the first lot or the second lot. The first lot arrived from Germany on an articulated lorry. They'd been strapped down with tie downs to such an extent that the tie downs had cut into the wood. The machining on them had been done terribly, so they were all scrapped and we had to get a new lot made. So the structure of the house, again, because of the location, there wasn't any prefabrication. Everything was built on site. Timber stud for the external walls, braced with smart ply, and a set of internal rooms made of clay blocks. The ones you can see here are making one of the bathrooms, and those clay blocks are glazed on one side, so that forms the interior face of the bathroom without any need for tiling. A view looking south along with two bathrooms. The end wall is the wall to my study where I am now, sitting behind that wall. And there's another half-built wall that will be the wall to the fireplace area. So the laminated glulam beams form train tracks that run down each leg of the L, sitting on top of those clay blocks that you can see in those pictures, in the picture there. I'll just stop now in case there's any points we want to pick up at this stage, or if not, can just carry on.
There are two brief questions in the chat. Maria, would you like to unmute yourself to ask your question?
Yeah, which is not specifically related to Eco House, but I'm in a very similar situation. So you said something that I hadn't thought of. You said that it had to be single story due to being backland development. So I just wondered whether it's not something I've double checked on. So is that something that was particular to your site or local authority, or is that a general rule?
No, it's not a general rule. We're in a conservation area. There had been a planning refusal from the previous owners, refused both by the council and by the planning inspector when they went to appeal. And they wanted to build like a sort of much more conventional dormer bungalow. And so it was challenging to get planning permission. And we didn't even think about going to 2 stories. We just felt that would put it out of court immediately. So we just addressed the reasons why the planning inspector declined to give it permission. And in the way in which we chose to design the house, for example, by leaving the cars at the front, by avoiding tree roots instead of running rampant over them, and one or two other things. So no, it's not a universal rule, but they will be looking at the amenity of your neighbours, and for example, overlooking other people's back gardens can be an issue in planning terms. So Maria, it does depend on your situation, but it's something, well, an architect will be able to advise you on better than me.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Bruce, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
Hi, yeah, just a very quick question. I just wondered what the size of your rainwater capture tank is.
Yeah, it's 4,250 litres.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, and we've only run out twice in 10 years.
That's pretty good.
We use it to flush the toilets and water the garden, basically. And our water consumption is about 55 litres per person per day, which I think compares to the UK average, something like 135. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
it has a big hit. Really pleased we did it. Yeah.
Yeah. And have you got kind of a flower bed on top, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's at least 4 feet under. So as far as the flowers are concerned, they don't know there's anything there. Yeah. It's quite deep because it had to be quite away from the house just because of fitting everything else in. Just one of those site details. That's how wide it ended up, perhaps deeper than it needed to be.
Yeah, the one that I know somewhere else is nowhere near as deep as that, and it's got a nice wildflower meadow on.
Yeah.
You should probably move on to the second half of your presentation.
Okay. Yeah.
That'll give us a little bit of time at the end.
Yeah. Sure. Okay.
A few more questions.
So I mentioned we had a green roof. There's a couple of cheery chaps. I think they're unrolling the root protection layer that goes under the green roof. It's a sedum roof, so it's the roof itself is a bit like a carpet of sedum that was just unrolled, and there it is in all its glory. You can see the solar heating array and the roof light to one of the bathrooms there. The solar hot water is a 2 kilowatt array. It runs for about 1,500 hours a year, plus or minus. If we assume on average when it's running, it's pulling in a kilowatt. It's actually pulled in quite a lot of kilowatt hours in 10 years. So it's a real good energy saving device. It's had absolutely no maintenance. Well, no, I tell a lie. I do wash it down to keep it clean. The guys who installed it first, when I first used it, I was only getting about an hour a day running, and I brought them back, and then they couldn't work it out, so they brought somebody else in and went up on the roof, and he nearly fell off the roof laughing because they put all these tubes 180 degrees out of kilter, so the side face that should face the sun was looking down at the roof. Fortunately, you can just rotate them all around and it all worked fine then. One of the sad things about the green roof is we don't get to use it except when we had the topping out party. So it would be nice to have sort of railings around it and actually use it as a space. But it is, our neighbours enjoy looking at it. So.
The ducks and the squirrels.
Yeah, and the birds and the squirrels and the ducks love rooting about on it. So materials, I think natural materials make a house for me. So we had oak cladding. We chose products. There are the clay blocks that make the interior rooms. The flooring is marmoleum, which is made from natural materials, and so that's the orange flooring in the studies, and then the wood flooring in the house is American black walnut. Lots of discussion. The chap with the white hair is Meredith, the architect. The lady with the pre-Raphaelite red hair is Helen. They were the two architects who designed the house for us. Did a fantastic job. I mentioned roof lights, light from above. Really valuable thing. Obviously, it's easy to do in a flat roof, single story house, but it really makes a difference to the light in the house, which is very important to us. Underfloor heating being laid. Aha, you say. I thought I saw the underfloor heating earlier. So when they came to commission it, water came up through the floor nearly everywhere. And it transpired that when the guy pressure tested it, he just put water in it and not antifreeze. It was left over the winter under pressure. And of course, all the piping failed within the concrete slab. There was no way of removing it or rectifying it. That had to be left there. And the only thing to do was to have a very thin 32 millimeter thick underfloor heating system laid it did mean that all the external doors and windows had to be taken away, and new ones that were 32mm shorter had to be made and brought in. So it was a bit of a drag at the time, but you forget about these things. You can laugh about them now. One thing you will find if you build a house is you have decision fatigue. You're constantly asked questions about where you want this, where you want that, what kind of knobs you want on those cupboards. Clearly here I'm thinking about a question and Sue's thinking, well, Ian will work that one out. I did do some work on the house myself and fitted the kitchen. I built up a good, one of the nice things about building a house in your back garden is you get to see the builders every day and build up relationships with them. And there, one of the builders took pity on me and came round in the evenings to help me fit the kitchen. That was really nice. He's not chiseling away the granite worktop there, by the way. He's removing a bit of wood from the cupboard underneath to fit the hob. None of you the plant room. You saw that on the video. A finished bathroom. Again, wonderful light from above. Natural materials. Another bathroom. The importance of placing windows so that when you open a door, you look out through a window rather than onto a blank wall. Nice design point there, I think. We have a wood burning stove, which we set the thermostat a little bit low in that room, so we're tempted to light the stove, which is very pleasant. There was some materials left over from the build, not enough to build a studio, but I couldn't resist building a little studio in the garden myself afterwards. And the house is really cozy. And that's the house just as it was finished, I think. It's still got the covers on the ventilation system, so clearly we hadn't quite moved in. But that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian.
Uh,
Matt, what questions do we have in the last few minutes?
Sure, yeah, thanks for that. And I think we got one from Bruce. Bruce, can you unmute and ask your question, please?
Yeah, thank you very, very much, Ian. That was very fascinating. Fascinating. I heard, I think you mentioned the use of clay blocks. I actually live in a 17th century house with clay bat walls, which are unfired clay blocks. And I wondered how similar your clay blocks would be to that.
Well, these have been fired. And they're actually made by Ibstock as a facing block for commercial buildings. They're very strong. They're much stronger than they need to be. There was something the architect had his eye on and wanted to use, and they have the great virtue in a timber frame house of providing thermal mass. So the temperature of the house is stabilized through the day and night by these blocks, which act like a giant storage heater, if you like. So they have a functional, well, they have a number of functions as well as aesthetic ones, but they are very definitely fired and very strong.
Yeah, that's very interesting because people say that one of the advantages of clay bat walls is exactly that same thing, the stabilization of the internal temperature, and certainly I find that both in cold winters and hot summers.
Thanks for the question, Bruce. And there's another one from Maria, an interesting one. Well spotted. Maria, can you unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
Yeah, I'm really interested in a green roof myself, but I noticed only half of the building had the green roof. Is that because they're expensive, or was there a sort of other considerations for that?
No, we were told that a green roof wasn't really compatible with rainwater recycling. So in fact, we only collect the rainwater from the ungreen roof. And we also collect it from the entryway roof as well in the garage, which gives us plenty for our needs. I'm not certain whether that's true about rainwater recycling. I think you probably could collect the water from the green roof. Of course, it will tend to absorb light rainfall, so it will interrupt the flow to an extent, but when it chucks it down like it's done recently, there's no doubt there's plenty of water going down the gutters you could collect. So that was the only reason. From the aesthetic point of view, I would like to have done the whole thing.
Apart from the roof, Ian, if I can ask a question, is there anything that if you were doing it today, you would do differently, having learned what you've learned from doing it, and also the developments that have happened since?
Well, I'd be pretty careful about watching the guys pressure testing the underfloor heat. No, we're really happy with the house. And
Sound transmission.
Sophie says sound transmission. Oh yeah, we don't have a, there is no door between the corridor with the bedrooms and the kitchen. So when I'm unloading the dishwasher noisily at 8 o'clock in the morning, it can upset those people who might want to have a lie-in. On the sound point of view, I would say the heat pump, which has been excellent, and again has just run for 10 years with no maintenance, is not silent. So if you do have one, you might want to hear one in action before you buy it. I think different makes are probably better than the one we've got. It's not a problem where it is, fortunately.
I see Maria has another question. Maria, can you ask your question?
Hi, yeah. Just wondered about Mole Architects. How did you find working with them? Were they a good architectural company to work with?
Yeah, we chose Mole. Actually, several years previously, there'd been like an open architecture weekend, and we actually went round Meredith's house out in Prickwillow. And I remember thinking I liked the kind of ethos of his house and the materials and the simplicity of the design and so on. And sustainability is a big thing with him. And also subsequently, I heard him talk at a meeting in Cambridge, and I thought, he's somebody I could work with. I mean, I think it's an individual choice. There's no doubt the practice has an excellent reputation for sustainable building and for beautiful buildings. And I found that he would let you influence the design. And if you were being stupid about the way you were doing it, he wouldn't say you're being stupid. He would gently suggest that perhaps there was a different way of doing it that might be better. And he was right. But no, the design, you know, we were allowed to reflect what we wanted very much in the design. And so it was a great process of, of cooperative design, which is what we wanted, rather than just handing it over to somebody else to get on with it.
Great. I have one question, just going back to the heat pump. Why did you decide to go with a ground source heat pump and not an air source heat pump, which we hear a little bit more about, a little bit less expensive?
Yeah. Well, because I was on the sustainability front, I felt it was the most efficient way. Well, it is the most efficient way of using electricity, which you can get from renewable sources, to create heat. So it was purely on efficiency. And yes, it was expensive to install, but we will probably get about 80% of the installation cost back through the renewable heat incentive over the 7-year period. So.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm seeing no more questions coming through the chat, only some comments about how great the tour was and how lovely your home looks.
Thank you.
If anyone else has any other questions, I mean, I think at this point, if it's all right with you, Anne, they can probably just directly unmute themselves, or
Yeah, well, what I suggest is I've got a little poll, which would be great, and just a few things to tell you all about things that are coming up. And then I think Ian said he has a little bit of time. And so if anybody, so after we're finished, if anybody wants to stay and have a little bit more chat, we can do that. The first thing is if I just launch this little poll, it'd be very helpful if you could fill that in to give us some feedback. And we launched this at after all the Open Eco Home tours we've been doing. So do fill in the poll. I hope you can see it all, can you? Yeah, good. I can see some people can see it. I think about 71% of people have voted.
But just because you've got one eco home doesn't mean that you might not want to create another one.
All right, we'll do another one then. Okay. Based on Ian.
So I get
A joint one, Mark.
so wait a minute. So you can all see that, I guess, can you? Can you all see the poll?
No.
We can see the poll, but we couldn't vote, which is not really necessary.
Oh yeah, okay, yes, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm now sharing the results.
Right.
So please see, vast majority, it's either much more likely or more likely. And as I think it was Sophie that said, why stop at just one eco home when you could have two? So thank you very much for that, people. That's really helpful for CCF when they're applying for funding and all that sort of stuff. So I'll just stop sharing that. There's a few events coming up. So if I can now manage to share this one. So the first thing that's coming, first thing that's coming up are a series of thermal image training sessions. CCF has 2 thermal imaging cameras, and you can get trained in how to use them. And the training is now happening online, and there are also some little supporting videos, or there shortly will be some little supporting videos to help you remember how to use it. And they're really brilliant. Whether you are wondering where the problems are in your house that you want to get fixed, or if you've got builders in or have recently had building in, they're absolutely fantastic for showing you the places where they said they'd put insulation and actually they missed it out. We found that really useful in our house. So there's 4 of these. So if you go on the CCF website, you'll see where you can get trained on those. And I think also in the follow-up email that you'll all get after this session, I think there'll be a link to these. And also, I think 1 or 2 people have had difficulty seeing the case study that Matt posted. And so we'll include that case study on Ian's home. And then another thing, many of you will be aware of this. There's currently this scheme called Solar Together, where Cambridgeshire County Council and the City Council and South Cambs and everybody are organising an auction, which the first is tomorrow, when various companies will be bidding to supply solar panels. And if you're interested in being part of this sort of bulk buy scheme, you just sign up, and there's no obligation. One will get an individual quote, I think by the end of October, and it's up to you whether you take up the offer or not. But personally, we've signed up for this. There seems to be nothing to lose, and we're quite keen on having the small amount of solar that we can fit on our house. So I think that's it. Yes, and of course there are still a few more online tours and talks. And if you go on openecohomes.org/autumn season, you can see them. I think probably, Ian, that photograph is actually taken in your house, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
It is. Yeah.
So Ian is one of the most popular of the Open Eco Homes, and rightly so. So what would be great is if you could write up in the chat what did you enjoy and any suggestions for improvement. And in the chat, I'm now just going to stop this sharing. And in the chat, I'm going to post a survey form, which if you could if you're able to complete that survey form, just cut and, download, cut and paste that link. Again, that's really helpful, helps us improve Open Eco Homes. And the inevitable question, this is a project of Cambridge Carbon Footprint, and donations are really important for continuing our work. Clearly, it's a little bit more difficult now we're all online, rather than there being a very arty bowl on the kitchen table for you to put donations in. But if you are able to make a donation to Cambridge Carbon Footprint to help to support this work and the other work that we do, that would be really appreciated. And I've just put the link to that in the chat again. So I think that's everything. So thank you very much for that. That's the sort of formal end of the session. But if you'd like to stay for another 15 minutes or so,